Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Repurpose podcast. I'm your co-host, Matt Lasher. I'm joined by my co-host, Tom McKenzie. And today we got a little bit of a treat. It's episode number 2. We want to start diving into analyzing some content. You guys may know from our first podcast that we talked pretty exclusively on veteran issues and recruiting issues. And I think it's relevant for us to start with analyzing the most recent video from the Pentagon that's kind of analyzing where we are in recruitment, the recruitment situation nationally. There's this great video that's released by the Pentagon that has the service recruiting chiefs, and the director for personnel and policy, I think personnel acquisition and policy at the DoD, who is the quasi-civilian boss of the recruiting service chiefs. And I think taking a look at what they're saying and giving our take on this is probably a good way for us to forward the conversation on national service, recruiting, veteran issues, that sort of thing. What say you, Tom?
Look, I'll just tell you right now, I'm sure that this is something that happens probably on a semi-annual basis. And for the 15 and a half years that I was in love with recruiting, doing it every single day for the institution, not one time in my life would I ever think to care about what the generals had to say to the White House press staff that's there. But watching this and kind of realizing that it's that important for those that are still in service, that are career recruiters like we are, to take a bit more interest in what's being said. I think this is the perfect opportunity to kind of showcase the picture and really let the public see what takes place. Because as you look at this audience that's out there, when you look at the press that's in the room, I'm sure there's some great people from a lot of places, but they sure are not asking the questions that really need to be asked. And that's what we hope to do here, is just kind of leave our comments and ask our questions that the general public would want to understand. So let's hit it. I'm excited. This is sitting back with popcorn time today.
Nothing like watching videos and kind of sitting back and listening to some good content and then talking about it. So you ready to kick this off, Tom?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, brother.
Today's briefing and update on the Department of Defense recruiting efforts. As you know, the U.S. military is the strongest fighting force on earth. For more than 50 years, our all-volunteer force has been sustained by qualified patriots who stand up to serve and keep our republic secure. The Secretary of Defense Austin has said our greatest strategic asset is our people. We must continue to recruit and retain the best that our country has to offer. The department remains deeply committed to ensuring that every qualified patriot has the opportunity to answer the call. We're fortunate to have with us today a panel of defense leaders to discuss today's recruiting environment and preview the service's goals for fiscal year 25. Dr. Katie Helen, DoD's Director of Military Accession Policy; Major General Johnny Davis, Commanding General, United States Army Recruiting Command at Fort Knox; Brigadier General Christopher Amrine, Commander, Air Force Recruiting Service; Rear Admiral James Waters III, Commander, Navy Recruiting Command; and
that dude's a gangster.
Howard, Commanding General, Marine Corps Recruiting Command. As a reminder,
and he's a gangster too.
Is on the record.
Nice.
I'll turn it over to each of our panelists for brief opening remarks before opening it up to Q&A. And please note, I will call on reporters and try to get to as many of you as possible. And with that,
so can you pause here really quick, Matt?
Yep.
Yeah. So can you describe who Dr. Helen is and what her role is with the service chiefs before we get too far deep into this?
Yes, absolutely. So underneath the Secretary of Defense, there are a series of undersecretaries that work for the Secretary of Defense. One of the undersecretaries is the Undersecretary of Personnel and Policy. And underneath that individual, who assumes overall cognizance of the human resources side of the Department of Defense, both civilian and military. And underneath that umbrella, you have Miss Helen, who I think is Helen, right? Dr. Katie Helen, and she is the Director of Acquisitions and Personnel and Acquisitions, which is more of the focused on the military recruiting aspect of it. So she is sort of like the de facto boss of these general officers who operate in each of their services as sort of the heads of recruiting. So Tom, when we were recruiting, we had a commanding general of half of the country called Western Recruiting Region. The other half was Eastern Recruiting Region. Those were 1-star generals. They reported to this cat over here. He's a 2-star general. And then he reports directly to, I think, a 3-star that works for the commandant. And that's sort of the in-service chain of command. And then he also administratively reports to the doctor on the panel here. And then she reports directly to the undersecretary, who reports to the Secretary of Defense. So it's definitely a bit more complicated than that, but that's a very good understanding of how sort of like this hybridized military civilian chain of command works and how the accountability system works within a recruiting.
Gotcha. So overall, just so that we paint a clear picture, she's basically, if we have to put it in simple terms, kind of the bot. She's overall responsible for the performance of all the services across the board. She is the boss to the CGs, even though there's not a direct line there.
Yeah, sort of. And so, and this is one of the problems that we have is that, if you're talking about a national strategy, you can see here at this bifurcation that's why that's a problem, because a lot of that responsibility has been delegated to the services, and their civilian oversight really isn't technically, oversight in a way. It's more of like policy. So if the Department of Defense imposes a policy on the services, it will flow through Dr. Helen, and she will go to the recruiting service chiefs and the commandants and the chairmen of the Joint Chief and the Joint Chiefs, and that will be policy pushed down through the services, and then they report back up to her. And that's generally how the flow works. And she is the civilian counterpart in the Department of Defense, most closely responsible for the recruiting effort. And we're going to see her speak to that a little bit in a minute here, and she'll talk a little bit about the struggles that they're having, which I thought was very interesting.
Gotcha. Well, let's bring out the popcorn because I'm ready.
All right, let's go back here, and I'll kick it. And I think she's up first, and then they go round robin with the rest of the service chiefs here.
Good afternoon. I am Katie Helen, the Director of Accession Policy. Thank you for inviting me to this media roundtable. And I'd like to start by expressing a special thank you to everyone over the past year, from our recruiting commanders to our recruiters to our MEPCOM personnel, who've contributed to the success of fiscal year 2024 recruiting missions following significant shortfalls during the previous years. The military service concluded fiscal year 2024 in a much improved position compared to this time last year, despite a continuously challenging and disinterested recruiting market. At the end of September, the service has enlisted just shy of 225,000 new recruits in fiscal year 2024. That's over 25,000 more than fiscal year 2023. Furthermore, the services had a 35% increase in contracts written compared to this time last year. U.S. MEPCOM saw a year-over-year increase of medical exam by 48%, and the active component started fiscal year 2025 with a 10% larger starting pool, or a delayed entry program pool, compared to this time last year. OSD and the services will continue to build off the momentum that we've gained in 2024. Nevertheless, we need to remain cautiously optimistic about the future recruiting operations as we continue to recruit in a market that has low youth propensity to serve, limited familiarity with military opportunities, a competitive labor market, and a declining eligibility among young adults. More specifically, we've observed over the last decade a growing divide between military and civilians. Data indicate that many of today's youth are not interested in military service and have many misperceptions about what life is like as a service member. Additionally, for the first time since this metric has been tracked, the majority of youth have never even considered military service as an option. That is, it's not even on the radar. This divide has been brought about by a confluence of many factors, including the shrinking military footprint and declining veteran presence across society. Young Americans now have fewer direct ties to a family member or a close friend who has served in the military. For example, in 1990, 40% of our young adults had a parent who served. That's down to 15% today. In the past, those direct ties were key to conveying the boundless opportunities and experiences that are gained from military service. And without these personal connections, we find fewer young adults are familiar with the benefits of service. Further complicating our recruiting challenges is the low number of youth who are qualified for military service. Data show nearly 77% of youth between the ages of 17 and 24 are not qualified for military service without some type of waiver. This is where programs like our Medical Accession Records Pilot, or MARP, and service member prep courses have been helpful to expand the market. but we also seek to expand the market by reconnecting with young adults and their influencers on the value proposition of service. For instance, the next generation of Americans to serve should know that there has never been a better time for them to choose military service. Youth today seek a larger purpose in their lives and desire jobs where they have greater participation in decision-making and can create a direct, tangible impact. Military service offers all of this. Service provides new perspectives, a sense of purpose, the opportunity to take on great responsibilities, and challenge the status quo. Service members find personal fulfillment in serving in every part of the world, responding with skills to truly make a difference. Military service has more than 250 occupations where each person will be individually challenged to reach their peak potential by providing a path to success. The military represents one of the most educated organizations in the world across all ranks. We provide our service members with competitive pay packages and benefits such as retirement savings and healthcare, along with unprecedented opportunities for continued education and training.
I want to stop there and talk a little bit about that, Tom. Is that okay? I think we went a little too far, but I think you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we could do that. I'm rolling in my chair right now, listening to all this, but yeah, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll have you kind of, and we'll talk a little bit about this. I want to dissect it. Can you explain to everyone what propensity is?
I mean, I think I can. So, propensity is the likeliness that exists for somebody to want to join, right? Like the desire that's there just based on their own individual circumstances, their familial, them being familiar with with military service, and just kind of the overall desire and sentiment, when it comes to enlisting. So I think that's probably my best definition, unless you want to correct me there, Matt.
It's not perfect, but there's no perfect definition, but that actually is exactly what it is, which is like the factors that lead someone to want to serve. And one of the greatest indicators of propensity is having a service member in your family who has served, or maybe a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt that has served in the military, because one of the biggest issues you have in where relationship people, me and you, Tom, is the trust factor plays very much into a decision like joining the military, and having that information front and center in your formative years before you graduate high school is super important to your desire or quote unquote propensity to enlist, right? And I think what she's touching on is this kind of this cycle of failure that's happening. Is we have less and less veterans. You mentioned it at the very beginning of our talk, where there's fewer and fewer veterans in our country. And because of the fewer amount of veterans, that's having a downward effect on propensity. So we're enlisting fewer people, and therefore creating less veterans. And that vicious cycle of not being able to meet requirements, and not being able to, not creating enough veterans, and that sort of cycle is happening within our services right now. And we'll dig more into this as we get to the service chiefs. But there's another area I want to talk to as well, because it burns me, man. Because you and I both know how oppressive MEPS can be. Yeah, I want to ask you this question. Can you touch on why a vast majority of the youth in this country are disqualified from service? What is that? What revolves around that? Can you just, and I can color commentary off of whatever you say.
Yeah, I mean, it can range from everything from medical to drugs to police involvement. Basically, somebody that doesn't require a waiver which is really what they're talking about here, means that you've got to be this squeaky clean kid who's never really gone to the doctor and had an issue, never had to see a counselor for any reason, never got a parking ticket, haven't smoked marijuana or done any other. You basically have to be Ned Flanders' kids, right? Like just the nerdiest human beings on the planet. And so when they talk about those that are qualified for service, and I think they said the overall population is 77%, but they're saying that 23% of the country is that kind of Ned Flanders-esque type kid that you probably wouldn't want to serve with anyway. And so the vast majority of folks that do enter service do require some sort of waiver because of those issues. And for me, it's like, we're not really telling the truth about what's actually affecting the thing. We're trying to make it seem like that's the only population that can be drawn from. And I don't know if that's your same point there, Matt. But it's like, this is a bunch of crap. To put that as the reason for failure, or to tuck it away as a reason that things are not excelling. And I think we're going to get into this a little bit later, but there is a process out there known as MHS Genesis that has really made that process that much harder on the individual recruiter out there. In essence, Genesis is now the MEP's ability, or the MEPCOM's ability, to pull every electronic medical record that has existed before, or that is in existence, and find reasons to accurately document medical information, but moreover disqualify more human beings from service that require those waivers. So I'm going to shut up, Matt, and just let you go. But I hear this and it just makes my blood curl.
That's spot on, brother. And it's like the people who are setting the conditions for what, quote unquote, a qualified individual is, are the same people complaining about, we're having trouble recruiting, we're having trouble with finding qualified individuals. Well, if let's use marijuana as an example here. If marijuana has become legal in most states across the country, and you have young people who has become more socially and culturally normative to have that experience before you turn 18 years old, and if you do that once before you enter a MEPS facility, technically that individual is disqualified. If you're playing sports, you're an athlete, and you've had to go to emergency room for whatever, right? To get stitches or have an operation or whatever, right? Technically, until that can be adjudicated through a MEPCOM doctor, that's disqualifying. So, not to beat a dead horse, and there's lots of other really, really good examples about this, but they are setting the conditions for disqualifying the public that they intend to serve. So they're taking the people who their audience is, and they're saying, well, you all can't be part of this, and complaining about it on the same time. So it's like it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It's like me saying, I can't save money, but every time I get paid, I go out and blow it on, I go to Best Buy or go on Amazon and I blow it all, and then I complain about the fact that I have no money. This is a self-imposed problem. And Dr. Heelan, I don't mean to attack her or too harshly, but one of her responsibilities is MEPCOM and policy, and that is really her responsibility. So she can sit up here in this panel and she can complain all she wants, but she's probably one of the most effective components that could influence this situation. And the answer to that problem really is let's get in front of the press and complain, and not take measures that could move the institutions that we need to serve in closer to the audience that we have, which is the American public, that key demographic of recruit that's between the age of 17 and 24 years old, and that's what they're talking about. So, any final shots before we continue on?
Well, I would just say this too: is they're sitting there and they're celebrating this record-setting year that they're having. And I don't know if you really caught this, and my memory is a little bit shaky, so I have to go back and review. But basically talked about there was a 25,000 increase from 1 year ago, from 2023 into late 2020, or at the tail end of 2023. And in essence, we're like shaking our pom-poms for failure, because it's not what they set out to do. None of the branches out there, yet we are talking to the press right now saying, hey, record-setting year, we still failed, but record-setting year, and we're proud of what we've done. And that's just not right, because you figure that people would want to know, if you cared about national security, you probably want to know the full picture, instead of having it painted for whatever reasons that they might be painting this, whether it's keeping I don't even know. I won't go there, Matt, because I don't want to make too many of our old colleagues upset. But the reality is, you're not doing what you said you were going to do. You're not meeting your mission, and that should be a problem and an indicator that it's time to do something different. And I think it kind of starts with the oversight that takes place on the branches of service out there.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of the hood needs to be popped on the Department of Defense and how they approach personnel and recruiting, and they need to start taking and swapping out parts. And that's the only way you're going to really fix this problem. Otherwise, you're going to have to buy a new car because it's just there's just no way.
And we're not attacking the individual services, because I'll say to our old peer group out there that's at the tactical level, making it happen day in and day out. Matt and I were career recruiters for the Marine Corps. You guys are absolutely crushing it, right? This is not an attack on you, but really the office that should be putting policies in place that enable you to win, and providing, a national strategy that everybody is behind to make it easier on that individual recruiter or that individual recruiter supervisor that's overseeing them. So not an attack to our old community, to our former community that we used to serve alongside. You guys are awesome. We know that you're killing yourselves every single day, but yeah, this right here is the person, or the branch that should be providing supporting fires to the cause.
Yeah, and I would say to that same audience that the reason why this is intellectually curious to me is because I was in those fighting holes with Tom, and when we were out there on the streets working with bad policy to accomplish a mission that was exceptionally hard, and we had to put our lives on hold, our personal lives on hold, to extend our professional lives into our weekends and our after hours in order to accomplish a mission that should never have been that hard. And I know those young people who are on the streets of America today, they're going to relate to some of this because, the young sergeant out there, I was that guy who goes to MEPS and doesn't understand why it's such a convoluted system. Well, if it's designed by the people who don't really understand the tactical level of this whole thing, that's how you get here. You get a disconnection from the baseline tactical level recruiter to these people who have advanced degrees sitting in an office, air-conditioned office, working 8-hour days, doing a press briefing about, oh, woe is me, we're having a bad year. But it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. It was kind of an okay year. It's just, we're going to be cautiously optimistic. Well, I think there ought to be a little bit more than I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I mean, he's essentially bragging about not missing as bad. I don't know how you feel about that, but when I was in the streets, if I missed, man, that was rough, dude. Like I didn't get like, oh, I'm going to be, hey, sir, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic for next month. Those words never seeped out of my mouth. I don't know about you, but I was always like, we're going to fix this, and we're going to fix this now. And you have my confidence that I'm going to pour every effort into getting this right next month. And that's the kind of level of commitment you'd expect from these folks, but it's really just kind of dancing around the problem a little bit. But do you want to go back to the video?
I think we probably should. We let her finish up her comments, and I think we've got to go to the Army after this, and then we've got to touch the Marine Corps. We got to touch my man, Rear Admiral Jim Waters, because that dude is an innovator, and at least he tells it how it is.
Okay, let's finish up Dr. Katie here, and then we'll flip over. We'll kind of skim through here and get to the individuals that we want to listen to.
Cool.
We offer these things that the young adults today look for when choosing a career, but in many respects, they just don't know it. Too often, the military is falsely seen as an alternative to college or an option of last resort. We are working to reframe this narrative so that Americans understand that military service is a pathway to greater education and career opportunities while defending democracy and the freedoms we hold dear. This is why the Joint Advertising Market Research and Studies Program has launched the digital Calling Answer campaign to build familiarity and with the value proposition of military service to nest with the service's specific campaigns. Further, the department's There Tomorrow Adult Influencer Media campaign targets parents, educators, and other relevant adult influencers to build advocacy for military service. Moreover, we have collaborated with our education partners through our military enlistment data to access to LIFT students, or our medals working group with state education agencies, to develop a strategy and a plan to share military data with states in order to provide credit to public high schools for military readiness in addition to college and career readiness. We've also partnered with our fellow national service agencies like AmeriCorps and Peace Corps to help amplify a message of service, because like military service, there's been a decline in propensity for national service opportunities. So we are working a whole of government solution. While we're here to talk about recruiting efforts today, we also want to celebrate the 225 the 225,000 young adults who've enlisted in fiscal year 2024. Through a spirit of selfless service, we continue to build and maintain the world's most capable military. I thank you for having me, and thank you for your continued efforts to better understand and support the department's recruiting mission. I look forward to your questions.
We got to stop it, man. I hold on. I gotta stop. I gotta say
225,000, not 225. I'm pretty sure it's not 225,000. It's 225,000.
Yeah, it's not even that. It's like, and she said this, and we paused the video and kept on going forward. So she's like talking about all the benefits that were there, but really what she was talking about were just like features of the service, right? And features of the service mean nothing without the benefit actually being tied to the individual. And so they're sitting there talking about, we offer attractive retirement savings. No, you don't. Not anymore, because you get a 401k now when you retire after 20 years in service, and you can take that at 4 years or you can take that at 30 years. It's not the same legacy retirement that existed there. When we sit here, we talk about the most educated force out there. Yeah, I'm sure that we dump a lot of money towards education, and the military is this super educated thing, but not necessarily giving the education the way that individual service members need it in service or post service, because you and I both saw what happens while people are in service. It just kind of goes on the back burner. It's not at the forefront. And then lastly, just the point that I've got to make, we're talking about this waning propensity, and service member, those that have served having kids, and less parents of these soon-to-be future service members existing. Well, why do you think that is? It's because the transition process that exists when you leave the military absolutely sucks. There's no other way to put it. It sucks. And so all we do is keep hurting ourselves at all fronts with zero consideration of what the end state is, and obsessing over this front end mission that has to be made. We've gutted benefits. We've made things harder for those that are in service. We're hamstringing human beings. And then you wonder why people don't want to really be part of it, but you want to sit here and talk about it being the world's greatest military. I'm sorry, I love America, but I think that we would get our butts kicked by a lot of other countries out there in sheer volume alone. Not to mention just a litany of other factors. And I just had to get that out of my system there, man.
Yeah, we are the New York Yankees playing in the Moneyball era of baseball, and we don't know it yet. And there's been indications, little red star clusters that have went up in Afghanistan and Iraq, and sort of the struggles that we've had as a nation to win conflicts and wars recently. And we really haven't internalized those lessons. And now we're alienating the one thing that really sets us apart, which is the patriotism and the desire for national service, which has really waned over the last decade. I mean, I homeschool my kids, but they're unfamiliar with it, and I don't think there's ever going to be an opportunity for them to get familiar unless I want it for them. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing the value proposition isn't there. I retired from the military like you did. I had that fixed income retirement coming in. I knew I was going to get at the end, the golden watch, the golden parachute, whatever you want to call it. But there was many times between the era of like my 10-year anniversary and that 20-year retirement where I wanted to walk away, because I was just like, man, I'm tired. I'm broken. I'm over it. And I want to do something else. But that retirement kept me locked in. That's not there anymore. It doesn't exist. There's no, nothing compelling somebody to look at the end state and stick around longer than they necessarily would have. And so that's a retention issue. That's separate from recruiting. That's going to create long-term retention issues. You're going to see a lower quality individual make it through the end, because your high quality people who have options and have other desires in life are going to walk. And you're just going to end up with this self-licking ice cream cone of failure that's going to keep propagating itself over and over again. And I care enough about the service, and I'm care enough to sit here and listen to this, but it's a real big problem. And I don't know, there has to be a discussion at her level and above to fix the problem, because the service chiefs are too focused on their little slice of the mission, and they're not really interested. They're interested in competing against other services, and not really interested in fixing the overall problem. So it's not going to be it's not going to be a solution that's going to get resolved at the service level. It's really got to come from leadership up top. The Secretary of Defense, the President, the undersecretaries that are responsible. Those are the people that have to create the conditions for the solutions to the problem. And I'll just say, like, they're talking pretty nice about how things are going, but the Army missed by something like 15,000 soldiers over 2 years. And that they're not the only ones, but the numbers are more dramatic with the Army because they're just a larger service. That's a division worth of people per year. How do you as a service cope with missing that many people over the course of 2 years? Yeah, maybe you're having a great year this year, but you're still 2 divisions short of soldiers. How do you, I don't know about you, brother, but Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton, there's something like 20,000 Marines on each of those bases. That's like a base for the Marine Corps. Like it's a substantial number of people. And how does that shape your ability to fight war? And these are discussions that we're not even talking about. It's not even in the vocabulary of these discussions, is like how we're coping with these shortages internally. And are we just running skeleton units? Are we shutting down units? What's the situation here? So, yeah. So what do you think?
All right.
You want me to move on from, she looks pretty happy with herself. I think we're done with her.
Yeah, I'm done with her. I'm kind of done with her. I think the Army is an interesting case, and I think the Navy is an interesting case on this iteration in this go around. So maybe watch the Army and the Navy. I love General Bowers. He's awesome to listen to, but I want to capture him at the end when he really starts talking about what they're doing to be different, so that we can comment on the Marine spirit out there for those that aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, he's pretty good dude.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Johnny Davis, U.S. Army Recruiting Commander, and thank you, Dr. Helen, and fellow recruiting commanders for taking the time to be here. As mentioned, the U.S. Army Recruiting Command exceeded our fiscal year 2024 recruiting mission with more than 55,000 future soldiers going to basic combat training. Additionally, our dedicated recruiters capitalized on those momentum and surpassed the fiscal year 24 delayed entry program mission of 5,000, contracting more than 11,000 future enlistments for fiscal year 25.
Can I say something really quick before we get too deep into this, dude?
Yep.
Okay. In fiscal year 23, I think it was 22 and 23, their missions were 65,000. So what he just said is we missed those missions by 15,000 per year. And then instead of saying, well, we really need 100,000 soldiers because we were that far off from where we need to be. No, what we did was we set our mission at 55,000. So 65, miss, 55, we made it. So what they're doing is they're moving the bar to failure. They're saying, oh, we want to win so bad, we're going to make the win happen. And, I'm not criticizing, maybe there is some sort of national strategy here that I'm not seeing. I'm a Marine, there could be something, it could be some, shell game going here, but I don't see how you can call that a win when you just eaten, 30,000 that you don't have in your service anymore. But I'm going to stop. And anything you want to say about that, Tom, or?
No, I think this is the, as folks listen to this whole video, if they go back and watch it, and especially guys from our former community, I think that this is kind of like the wake up that folks need to have, because all the answers are here. They're just hidden behind this positivity, because look, no one wants to admit when you're getting your butt kicked. No one wants to admit failure, especially these recruiting chiefs, but facts are facts. And, even though you can move the shells around, it doesn't change the bottom line of how it affects national security across the board.
Yeah. And these guys are super important members of their military communities. These recruiting service chiefs are probably trying to solve the biggest national security issue that the nation faces, which is national service. And I don't, this gentleman here, I don't, he's probably a very talented and capable dude, but he's inheriting probably a disaster. So, and it's always, we're going to get into this later, but that's a whole nother conversation. But branding is a desire to not hurt your brand, makes you want to say nice things for the sake of the brand, but then hide the negatives because you want to create an environment where people are willing to come to are willing to buy. Right. So that advertising campaign, the message you're sending out has to be somewhat positive, because if you're constantly negative, if you're being honest, really in this space, it's turning people off, because if people don't want to do something, there's got to be a reason. And that's how consumers act. They buy on that brand familiarity. They buy on those, trusted brand decisions. And so if the brands are hurting and there's a problem, that's signaling to consumers not to buy. And I think they're focused on protecting that, sort of like, the instinct is to protect the brand, and having a win this year. I'm thinking in my mind, if that's what they're doing, it's probably a brand decision. Look, we got to come out and we got to say, hey, America, we're winning again. Look at us. We're doing it. We're getting there. We're gonna, and by moving the goalposts a little bit. And our service is fantastic at that. We hate losing, man, more than any other service out there. We'll do anything not to lose, but we'll get to that later. But anyways, I digress. All right, let's go back to this dude here.
It's a great start and a very positive momentum. Achieving these goals helps ensure our Army has the personnel needed to meet and strength numbers established by Congress. Just over a year ago, the fierce competition for talented Americans and the need to modernize recruiting efforts led the Secretary of the Army to announce recruiting as the Army's #1 priority and the need for recruiting transformation. In the past year, we've witnessed historic changes that generated incredible positive momentum for us in the Army. This really started in February 2024, after about a year of putting many of these initiatives together, and it hasn't slowed down. Our hardworking recruiters, whole of Army support, and transformation initiatives made our fiscal year 24 success possible. We know we are not out of the woods yet, but we remain steadfast to mission success this year and beyond. So as I look back on the past year, I think there are two main contributors to the success we're seeing: our investment in the recruiting force and their families, and the whole of Army investment in recruiting. We know the importance of putting people first and starting this investment with adapting our recruiter assessment and selection processes. Incorporating recruiter feedback, we also revamped training at the recruiting college and added 2 weeks to our Army recruiting course to focus on people and quality of life. Our People Week brings recruiters and their families virtually together to prepare them for the demands of life away from military installations. Our senior leaders supported recruiters with historic incentives in fiscal year 24. Recruiter incentive pay continues. Authority to promote sergeants who graduate the Army recruiting course to staff sergeant. These are all volunteers. Over 927 have been promoted. Meritoriously promote up to 150 qualified sergeants and staff sergeants to the next grade, and promote fully eligible sergeants and staff sergeants who enlist 24 future soldiers to basic combat training in a 12-month period. As of today, we have 21 promotions in this category. In addition to the investment and professional development of our people, we continue to leverage our soldier referral program, where soldiers from around the globe in every formation have an opportunity to contribute to recruiting efforts. This program is a little more than 20 months old, and we've already received more than 77,000 referrals from soldiers, resulting in 5,000 contracts and many more in the pipeline. The Army addressed the medical backlog and surged over 60 medical providers to 33 select military entrance processing stations across the country, increasing enlistments for the Army, Army Reserve, and our sister services. Our wonderful providers completed 6,000 more physicals as compared to last year. The Army is paving the way in other avenues for young Americans to serve. A first of its kind, life accelerating program started in 2022, the Future Soldier Prep Course. Invest in young men and women, helping them unlock their potential and achieve academic and fitness readiness for military service, with a graduation rate over 90% in both academic and physical tracks. With recruiting transformation, marketing efforts are even getting better. Throughout fiscal year 24, our teammates at the Army Enterprise Marketing Office built upon the Be All You Can Be campaign while synchronizing marketing and advertising efforts to reach expanded audiences and connect with more prospects interested in military service. Our recruiting staff and innovation team have been hard at work to transform the enterprise's prospecting efforts and adapt to market expansion. We continue to look beyond the high school market, and in fiscal year 24 had an average enlistment age of 22 years and 4 months, and this is going up. Also, 1 out of every 5 enlistees has some college or is a college graduate. Our increased usage of digital job boards and rollout of the Go Recruit mobile app, which was a recruiter recommendation, have improved our efforts immensely. We started Recruit 360 pilot, a new AI prospecting experiment that utilizes machine learning and AI-assisted lead identification to enhance recruiter efficiency and focus on quality over quantity. So we're trying to get beyond the old days of high school lists and use AI to help us refine the lead market of our qualified applicants. Our investment in people and Army's investment in recruiting made fiscal year 24 a success. There are no words to express how proud I am of the hardworking recruiters that crushed it in every community. Compared to fiscal year 23, these young men and women increased productivity by 43%, an outstanding improvement. As we kickstart 25, we will continue to invest in the people, maintain momentum, transform the enterprise, and innovate our workforce. The Secretary announced earlier this month the Army's enlistment goal for fiscal year 25 is 61,000 future soldiers with a delayed entry program target of 10,000. Our recruiters are already kicking it in high gear in fiscal year 25, and they're doing very well right now. Again, thanks again for your time. I look forward to your questions. I'll turn it over to my good friend, Brigadier General Amron, and of course, the OU.
What do we think there, brother?
I mean, he just got done saying that it was a 43% increase, right? So again, have to peel the onion back a little bit there. But if you hit 55,000 and that was a 43% increase, that might have been just kind of like a miscue in what he was reading right there. But the mission for them is what he said. It's at 61,000, so they're increasing it 6,000 when they've really been short how many over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's a $4,000. It's a $4,000 person reduction from 2023 and 2022. So they're still operating under a reduced mission to get wins. I think it's what this boils down to, is they're just trying to get wins. And they're talking about all these tools they're implementing. Dr. Heelan did the same thing. It's all bureaucratese for, we don't know what to do, and we're like creating AI apps. What are you talking about, dude? Like, I don't even know, like, what is an AI app going to do for you? I mean, I'd love to see that in more detail. I'd love them to explain how that's going to help you get leads. Like, I just don't really understand. Like, I mean, referrals from the active duty force is good. We worked that when we were in service through the command recruiter program. That's been around since the beginning of time. So maybe they're incentivizing it more with promotions and things of that nature. I just don't, I don't see a lot of intuitive solutions to the problem. And I do think this year we're going to be heading into a economic slide, or not. I wouldn't say a slide. I think it's going to be a challenging year for the country. And I think that's going to benefit recruiting because it's counterintuitive. When you have a rough jobs market, it tends to favor the military. So I think we're going to have an uptick. I don't think it's going to last very long. I think they're going to do well for maybe a period of this year, and it's going to slide back into, kind of disaster towards the end of 2025, if I had to guess. But what do you think?
No, I agree. And you know what? I got to just say this, Matt. The one thing that I appreciate the general saying here is the appreciation for the recruiters that are on the street, like kicking butt is, I think, the quote that he had used there. At least they're trying to do something, is what it seems like, taking some injects from their people. But let's be realistic. Adding 2 weeks to a school with a week devoted to giving families resources to understand what it's like to not have base support isn't going to have a dramatic impact on contracting. It might maybe help a recruiter and his wife or her husband, navigate life better. Which, hey, can't knock that. But it's not going to solve the problem, which is people. And again, the interesting thing here is that most of these generals are only focused on front-end recruiting, enlistments coming in the door. Well, who's going to ask the question of what's really causing this and what can we do about that? And I think that's the thing that really blows my mind, is that the end of a recruiting model for these services really stops after somebody has become that specific service member and back in that recruiting referral model. Like that's where it stops. Like they care about taking somebody from a name on a list until they have them in boots and are getting referrals out of them. But they, again, are not considering what the process is when somebody leaves the Army or Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and how that process is hurting them on the front end. It's a complete miss, and none of us really saw it while we were in, but it is clear as day with the work that you and I have done that there is a direct link to that. If you can make people successful while in service and have them thrive post-service, you're generally going to have a bit of a higher propensity and that feel towards that. But again, it's not any part of this conversation because we're just kind of sitting here licking our wounds in the least abusive way that we can to ourselves, saying the sun is going to come out tomorrow and it's a little bit brighter today. I mean, come on. What are we talking about here? You missed your mission, period, the end.
Yeah.
The nation is less at risk because you missed your mission.
Bro, I wish when I couldn't, let's as a good analogy for you. I sure wish that if I didn't have the money in my account, I could just adjust my mortgage payment down and make a win every month. Like, you know what, mortgage company, I didn't make it last month. I didn't make it the month before, but let's go ahead. I'm going to give you like half of my payment and then we're going to call it a win. Can you please do nowhere else in this world does that logic play, but in the world of government where we can just we can maneuver and change the target. And I understand I understand why they're doing this. It's an image issue. It's a connection with winning. They want to have that. They want to have that feeling of, they want to give they've had recruiters in the field for 2 years that have just been, driven into the dirt, and they want to give them a win. And there's probably a lot of that internal logic. But I'm looking at this as a civilian now that knows this game, and I care more about national security and the implications of that, because Lord knows if they can't figure it out, it's a draft, it's conscription. And I got a kid that's going to be draft age pretty soon. So from my perspective, I don't have a lot of sympathy because I worry about the future of the nation. I worry about the implications of these like rolling failures that we're just kind of calling, hey, it's a win. Yeah. I'm making half payments we're not paying down our house and we're calling it a win. It
would be a little bit different though, Matt, if the quality of life that recruiters were having right now was dramatically increased by these actions, right? Like if the canvassing recruiters, the career recruiters, like the folks that can commit their lives to making this mission happen, if their life was, rosy posy and everything was good and they were crushing it and feeling fulfilled and everything else was good, I could almost live with that. It would be okay. But they're just as miserable now, if not more miserable than they've ever been. And we're sitting here, shaking the flag saying it's going to be all good. And we're making strides. Well, I'm sorry if either one of us try to use that excuse when we missed by one contract a decade ago, you would get blasted until the cows came home. Yet now here we talk about as a force by missing by tens of thousands over time. And we're sitting here talking about, we're cautiously optimistic. The sun's going to come out tomorrow. This is disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah, brother. And what would have happened if like on the 15th of the month, me or you went to the big boss in our old job and was like, I don't think I'm going to make it this year. So what I'd like to do is just adjust my mission down. What I'd like to do, brother, is I want to win just as badly as you do, but I wonder if you could talk to your boss and be okay with me missing. So we all change it together and we all make it together. How's that sound? It wouldn't fly, man. Like it's, and that deceptiveness of it bothers me. Like the kind of insincerity of it. I understand it to a certain aspect, but also like, yeah, you're absolutely right. This isn't helping the baseline recruiter. He's just as much pressure on him and her as anyone else. And I'll be honest with you, like, did you hear what he said about the 2.0 for 12 months?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would have been promoted 3 times.
20 people who've written 2 contracts over the course of a year. And the Army how many recruiters the Army have? Like 10,000 recruiters. They have an unbelievable amount of recruiters on the streets. And they only have 20 of them that's wrote a 2.0 for 12 months. If I had written a 2.0 for 12 months. When I was on the duty, I might not be on. So I'm barely off substandard, dude. I'd be barely, I take a pull discharge and I'm probably on subs. I know I'm not making my mission. Like that's kind of a humble brag. If you know the duty, it's not really a humble brag. It's kind of like, you don't have a lot of high performers, and that's not the recruiter's fault. It's the propensity issues. It's the strategy. It's the overall structure of this thing. They're just not equipped to win. And
it's MHS genesis. It's the factors that these recruiters are having to fight through that none of us had to fight through before. And I don't know if like 23-year-old Tom gets reborn in 2025 here to go light the world on fire again. I don't know that I'm writing more than a contract or two a month at best.
Yeah.
Just because of the limiting factors that are there. And I think for a lot of old heads that come from our universe, from our tenure, we sit here like, oh, back in the day, I would write 7 contracts a month, 8 contracts a month, had to do it. Well, I think it's about adapting to the times. And I can tell you this much, the fight in the recruiters that I see in the streets, on a daily basis is no less than what it was in 2007. But there is a lot more, there's just so many more factors that are affecting them in negative ways. One other thing, Matt, I just got to say, you're talking about all this technology and leveraging, technology to help with AI. But he said that they're trying to get away from high school lists and getting away from, probably influencing the community within the high schools. And that is a grave mistake. And go surround yourself by some smart career recruiters. That's dumb. That is the dumbest thing that you can do, because investing in the high schools, investing in that market is absolutely critical. That's dumb. Go get go get smarter career recruiters around you, because that is the most idiotic thing that you could publicly say from somebody who understands the recruiting model as it stands.
Bro, you know why he's doing that? I think there's a massive shift of people who are seeking out non-public school options for their kids. I think the pandemic really was like the watershed moment for a lot of people to pull their kids out because they had to, because schools were closed. I just think like a lot of families just decided not to go back, and they restructured their household to accommodate having their kids home. I enjoy it, like enjoy having that interaction all day long. And I don't think like the quality of public school education, I'm sure there's great places out there. I don't mean to attack anybody who's a public school teacher, but I am going to say, like, overall nationally, that quality has slipped. And I think people are less reliant on our public school system. And I think if you're a recruiter, could only get a list from public school, and every year a percentage, a 0.5% or whatever, every year over year, you're losing population. You're not getting those names anymore. Maybe that's what that is. Maybe that AI tool, that they're talking about somehow pulls names of young people who aren't in that system anymore. I don't know, but I'm just kind of trying to read the tea leaves here. I'm sure that's an impetus, because at the scale of the Army as being the largest branch, even a 1% decline in list population could be devastating to the overall mission. For the Marine Corps, I remember a win really is having 1 or 2 enlistments out of every class in school. That was usually pretty good, but the Army, they got to do more than that. They got to bring down a lot more enlistments. So it could be, over the course of the entire nation, over the scale of the nation, it could be a really big problem. So maybe that's what that is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that's probably not that's probably not a very good strategy. Probably not a very good, tactic. And again, why this probably needs to be revamped above the services themselves, because again, they are just brands competing against each other. I mean, literally, that's what you can compare it to. These are all like car companies right now. That some are way cooler than others. Like the Marine Corps is way cooler than the other branches of the service. But that's what it is. It is brands competing against themselves when really DoD needs to come in here and get everybody to start playing nice and supporting each other in terms of solving this problem and actually putting solutions on the table that feed propensity and feed enlistments, instead of letting it continue to just go down this crash course and have a bunch of, 2-stars that are just trying not to break the system long enough before they move on to their next position. Because, again, not attacking any of them as individuals, some of them have extensive recruiting experience. But really, at some point in time, when you get that high on the totem pole, you become you become adverse to risk taking and adverse to actually trying to develop solutions. And really, it's about sustain and hand it off to the next guy a little bit better than what it was, which is what I think we're seeing directly here, Matt.
I agree. I think that's a great analysis. You want to kick back in the Army, or do you want to move over?
I think we need to go to Jim Waters, because again, I'm not trying to be weird, but I have a crush on this guy. Not in a weird sense, but in the sense that this was the first guy that Navy was getting their teeth kicked in before I left, and got their teeth kicked in. He steps in and they start taking action. And so this is a guy who might not have all the recruiting answers in the world, but I can tell you this much: he's trying to move the ball in a different direction by coming up with some solutions out there. And he's probably, in my opinion, the most innovative out of the group in watching this.
Yeah, I've heard a bit about him. I'm not too informed, but we've talked to some people, mutual contacts of ours, that speak pretty highly of him. So I'm interested to see what he's going to say. Actually, I don't think I've watched him. I think I'm going to skip past the Army. I might have skipped past the Navy when I heard the Army or something. So I'm interested to see what he has to say. So let's go to that.
Cool.
Talk about the Navy's recruiting efforts over the last year and to outline some of our goals for fiscal year 2025. We know that to remain the most capable Navy in the world, we must recruit the best of America, building pathways for all qualified Americans who choose to serve our nation. Fiscal year 2024 was a year of significant achievement for Navy recruiting due to the hard work and dedication of our recruiters, our leadership, and support teams across the country. Together, we contracted 40,978 active component enlisted sailors into the Navy against a goal of 40,600. This was no small feat, and I want to take a moment to recognize the frontline Navy recruiters who worked tirelessly to meet our goals. They did an outstanding job navigating a highly competitive recruiting market. And their efforts are a testament to the Navy's commitment to building a talented, mission-ready force. This success didn't happen by chance. It was the result of strategic changes we made to adapt to the current recruiting environment. Key adjustments included increasing the number of recruiters by approximately 800 and removing bureaucratic barriers to rapid decision-making and contracting. When we take care of our recruiters, they take care of the mission. Because we recognize that today's recruits are engaging online more than ever, we ramped up our presence on social media, expanded our esports efforts, and employed creative talent in our award-winning Sailor Versus YouTube series. Additionally, our marketing and advertising efforts focused on real, authentic stories from actual sailors addressing perceived barriers, concerns, and key motivators related to joining. Another major initiative in fiscal year 2024 for the Navy was the establishment of our Recruiting Operations Center, or ROC, which has proven invaluable. The ROC consolidated our data and analytic capacity into a single source of truth to continuously assess and improve recruiting practices. This emphasis on shared learning and best practices is helping our recruiters meet their goals. And it will continue to play a key role as we move forward in 2025. Finally, we streamlined our medical waiver process to make well-informed decisions in 0 to 3 days, giving recruiters and candidates the opportunity to act quickly. As we turn our attention to fiscal year 2025, I want to note that while we're coming off a successful year, we are not taking our foot off the gas. Our goal for fiscal year 2025 is to build on our momentum and recruit another 40,600 new sailors, which reflects the growing needs of the Navy as we continue to modernize and strengthen our capabilities. The road ahead won't be without obstacles. As my fellow recruiting commanders have noted, the labor market remains competitive, and military service is one of many options available to young Americans today. To stand out, we'll continue to refine our message, positioning the Navy as a premier opportunity for professional development, education, and service to the nation. And while mindful of evolving societal expectations, especially with regards to work-life balance and career flexibility, we will continue to highlight the opportunity for each young American to forge a better version of themselves in America's Navy. In the end, I'm optimistic about the year ahead. Fiscal year 2025 will bring its own set of challenges, but with the strategies we've implemented and the talent we have in place, I'm confident we will meet our goals. Thank you.
Yeah, can I start this one out?
Yeah.
I want to make a comment about, so I want to delineate what he's saying against what the Army dude said and what Dr. Heelan said. They're relying heavily on, these fancy programs. Like each of them talked about initiatives and studies and programs and like the wizardry, right? Oh, we're going to do these. This guy, everything he said, I could understand. He's not trying to refer to some magical back-end program that might help them with the AI tool or, some initiative at the Department of Defense level. He's speaking directly to efforts tied to the tactical level of recruiters. And that's out of any leader I've ever served with. If you can understand what's going on at the base level of an institution, most problems can be solved. But if you're disconnected and you're relying on, people around you to feed you information, you're not going to make good decisions. And I can tell already by his statements that he's talking specifically about recruiter level initiatives, things that he's doing down there with them, their quality of life, their efforts, improving their tools. He's created a operations center that's data focused. And I think that's really critical, like having good real-time data, pushing medical waivers quickly. That boom, that's a huge problem on the streets. You know how it is. I am in a mission month. I got to write 5 or 6, 7 contracts, and I got 5 people sitting on waivers, and no one cares about that but me. That feels really bad, Whereas if you see people like this who are taking it personal and going out there pursuing these waivers and making it quick, that's big. And I think the Navy is the closest competitor to the Marine Corps of all the services. I always kind of felt like I could gauge how I would do based on how the Navy was doing, because I always felt like the market was kind of similar. The Army was always going off for volume, and the Air Force was just picking cream off the top because they're the Air Force. And the Marine Corps and the Navy, they really kind of competed in the market for that kind of quality level. And I could always gauge myself off of how they were doing. And I know he's clearly a talented commander.
No, 100%. Now, again, this guy, I've just watched him, like specifically on the LinkedIn platform. He is making comments on, recruiters' posts at like 11 o'clock at night. And, you can tell just based on the responses that are there, it's either him doing it and he's just a genuinely good human being, or they've got the most badass administrative secretary that's sitting there cleaning up his LinkedIn pages. But from everything I've heard, it's 100% authentic. They also, not to deal with the cat, with the strange cat in the bag here, but they started bringing on some of those Cat 4 kitty cats in order to be part of that goal. And so for anybody that doesn't know what a Category 4 is, or a Cat 4, is it's somebody who scores between 19 and 30 on the ASVAB, or the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, meaning that those folks are not necessarily qualified for enlistment based on the operating standards. However, the Navy made a change to their op order, or the equivalent to their operations order, that did allow for a certain number of those Cat 4, human beings in order to join. And I know that's something that's touched on later on in the video, but good on them. There was, huge shortfalls in 22 and 23. And to see the fact of the matter, 40,000 is what they contracted and assessed this last year against the Army's 55,000. And I don't know numbers specifically, Matt, you might probably have a better grasp, but how much smaller is the Navy recruiting force in comparison to the Army's recruiting force? Or how much smaller are the services, in numbers? And I'm just saying, for me, I can say that the Navy is absolutely outperforming the Army this year, regardless of what cheat codes or hacks they had to use in order to get themselves across the line.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you want to speak in a simple way about these issues. If you get too fancy, it usually, to me, it tells you that you're not really tracking, because me and you, the language we use from the day we started as recruiters to the day we retired would remain the same. And, there's certain phrases and words and tools you use, and those never change. And you hear him say, like, speak to those tools. That's an important, like, that to me, that I picked it up right away. And I would be shocked to think that anybody else would be posting on his link. I think this guy's sincere. He probably is posting. He's out there really kind of committed to this thing. But I would say that they had a shortfall. So I want to say that their mission, and don't quote me on this because I'm trying to remember what I read, but they had a shortfall. He inherited a sailor shortfall of about 20,000 sailors going into his command. And I think I think 2023, they missed by 5,000. Which if you want a perspective, and I like to give perspective on what numbers mean, because a lot of people say, what does that even know? It's a huge institution. What does 5,000 matter? Well, the U.S. operates 12 carriers. And those carriers at any given time, I think half of them are in maintenance and half of them are sailing around the globe, or it's like 4 of them out, 4 of them are in maintenance, and 4 of them are laid up for a period of time with their sailors dockside. So they're constantly doing stuff, right? So you constantly got to be in motion or in some form of maintenance in order to achieve our naval mission. And that 5,000 miss, that shortfall in 1 year, constitutes the manning level for one carrier. And his inherited shortfall of 20,000 sailors is 4 carriers worth of sailors. So if you start equating it, and the Navy is great because you can really kind of, draw that mental picture for people. That's the shortfall that they're struggling with, which is keeping their ships manned. And unlike, maybe an Army base where you have units that are operating at half strength, and maybe that just kind of curtails, the operational capability of that unit until they can get manned up. In the case of the Navy, if they don't have the right number of sailors, it may mean they can't sail a ship. There's some real big consequences that come with shortfalls in their service. So, I think it's no accident that they got this guy. They probably pulled him out of like some sort of really like highly promising post where he was going to move up and probably command some, naval section. But I think this is where he belongs, and I think all the services should look to their most promising officers should be in this space, because this is the future of the services. And if he can, 41,000, I think is higher than their 23 missions. So they actually increased their mission and made it, which is they're the only service that's done that. And that's something to point out, because he had a shortfall of 20,000. So he has to make that up. And the Navy, if they don't have the sailors, they can't sail the ships. I mean, it's just a very simple thing. And obviously there are sailors that are on leave. There are sailors that are stateside, and there's things that you can do as a Navy to, cover up, or not cover up, but account for those losses. You can move by moving people around and increasing your op tempo. But there's only so much you can do. And I think that's a real problem for the Navy. And I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah. So Matt, now we have to do General Bowers. We have to do Bill Bowers and give him his shot. And look, you guys are going to see why the Marine Corps continues to just kick tail every day when it comes to it, because it's just a Marine thing. So we'll let him do his we'll let him give his brief on where they stand. Oh, there he is.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Talent we have in place, I'm confident we will meet our goals. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow military leaders. It's a pleasure to appear before you today to provide an update of your Marine Corps' recruiting efforts. Your Marine Corps exists to fight and win our nation's battles, and our performance in recruiting speaks for itself. Our combat heritage is embedded within Marine Corps Recruiting Command's DNA. We share the same fierce competitive spirit to win as those Marines who've gone before us, no matter the challenge. Over the past several decades, the Marine Corps has made institutional investments into recruiting to ensure that we are resourced with the very best commanders and Marine recruiters to accomplish this demanding mission.
This has been and will continue to be our greatest source of strength as we face what some refer to as the most challenging recruiting environment since the inception of the all-volunteer force. Marine recruiters will continue to meet the expectations of our nation by holding true to our warriors ethos and our core values of honor, courage, and commitment. We compete for the very best young people in every zip code in our nation. And our Marine recruiters are actively attracting and inspiring young men and women of character eager to take up the challenge of earning the title Marine. While we welcome all qualified and motivated applicants to take up this challenge, we refuse to lower our standards. We understand that to meet the high, almost mystical expectations that the American people have of their Marine Corps, that we must continue to attract and inspire young men and women of character who desire to live a life of significance by becoming a U.S. Marine. Despite our success in fiscal year 24, we continue to face the same challenges as the other services. Historic lows in qualification rates, low propensity to serve, a challenging labor market, and a fragmented media landscape continue to have a compounding effect on the recruiting environment. To combat these conditions, Marine Corps Recruiting Command will do what Marines have always done: innovate, adapt, and win. As such, we are focused on my priorities of 1, training the most proficient recruiting force in the world; 2, manning all of our recruiting sectors; 3, securing resources to support our people in the field; and 4, adapting our geographic laydown to reflect the changing demographics of our nation. And we're moving out at speed to make these organizational changes. As we attack in the fiscal year 25, we will continue to reinforce and expand the trust of the American people in their Marine Corps, positively shape the future of the Marine Corps, and enable our Marines and their families to be happy and successful. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you, Semper Fidelis.
Thank you very
It's what you'd expect. Absolutely. Yeah. Motivated, talking about the baseline recruiter. That's what you got to do. Nothing fancy. It's blocking and tackling. As a former boss of mine once said, you got to learn how to block and tackle before you run the double reverse. And this guy clearly gets that. So good on him.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out. So,
yeah.
This is one of the. Go ahead. Sorry, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I know you do your thing.
I'll say, so General Bowers was committed. While we were listening to him, I looked him up, and he was commissioned in 1990. So my eyes are immediately drawn to the recruiting ribbon, right? So my eyes go to that to see what's going on there, because in my mind, that's an indication of your seniority on the duty, right? And if you become a career recruiter outside of awards, that's the only ribbon you're going to earn. And so looking at his stack there, I see that he spent a tour on the drill field in some capacity. And then he spent, I think it looks like 1 star there and a ribbon. So he spent 2 tours before becoming the MCRIC commanding general. So he's essentially at 35 years in the Marine Corps, and he's done 2 tours in recruiting duty. And now he's the commanding general for his 3rd tour. I would like to see personally more of that. For the guy leading the institution, I'd like to see 3 or 4 tours. And for Marine Corps officers, and I can speak probably across the board, there's opportunity to serve in recruiting levels at different levels. You got the recruiting level, operations officers, executive officers, commanding officers. You've got your districts, you've got your regions, and you have this guy. I'd like to see maybe 1 or 2 more tours, because if you're acquainted with the duty and not super familiar with it, it makes it really hard to make the systemic changes that are required. And like you said earlier, just enough not to want to break anything. And not to say that General Bowers isn't a transformational leader, that his leadership isn't good. It comes to technical know-how. It comes to the mechanics and the confidence you have in messing with the mechanics of recruiting duty. And as we continue to slide as a nation in recruiting, we're going to need people who are intellectually recruiters. And what we have now, I can speak for the Marine Corps because this is my service, is we have infantrymen, we have pilots, we have logisticians that are part-time recruiters. And what we really need is a force of officer that is they wake up in the morning and they're intellectually recruiters. And once you have that kind of caliber person, not to say, and that's not a judgment call on any of it. This guy seems like an amazing dude. I've rarely have had bad experiences with Marine Corps officers, particularly general officers. But that, I think that's where you start getting into the ability to make, like that kind of change, the change that we're talking about, Tom, national change. And then when you see these positions come open up, civilian side positions, the DOD would love to see one of these recruiting service chiefs be able to come up, rise into those positions and be able to possess Marine Corps leadership, at the highest level, and then be able to impose that leadership on the civilian side of recruiting to create a national mission. That I think is what needs to happen. And so I would like to see like someone like him in a Katie Heelan position, right? In this kind of oversight position, because you can see like his passion for this is there. It's just the know-how, I think, is where you start to, I don't want to break it. I know just enough to lead this thing, but not enough to make the change that may be required. So anyways, I'll let you comment, brother.
I mean, that's pretty much it. It's like, I'd love to see him be the next Dr. Katie here,
Yeah.
affecting policy for all the branches, right? Or even a Jim Waters, if he had the recruiting background overall. And I think that was the overall take, is why are we not grooming officers to lead these organizations and beyond? It's absolutely crucial. I'd say at most, most officers that get affiliated with recruiting, at most, they're looking at maybe three different tours. And here it is, 35 years in the Marine Corps. He was a recruiting station commander. He was a district commanding officer who oversaw 8 recruiting stations, out in the Southeast there. And he crushed it on both of those tours from everything that I read and researched. And now he's back as the general affecting policy. But imagine what his life would be like, or imagine what the results would be if his career was spent just intricately developing the skill sets to be a true practitioner of recruiting and then affect it for the service the same way that he did as a infantry Marine. And that's really what the problem is that we're not, developing long-term solutions. It's just kind of next guy up. Hey, it's been this way forever. This is the status quo. We're at a point right now, services wide, that the changing has to think. Because if the changing doesn't think and we don't do something different, look, we already know where this is going, and I think that really comes up in this next round of questioning by the media here. So, Matt, I say that we got to get General Bowers' final comments, because he closes that out, and I do have something to say about that. But I think there's probably a couple. We've got a little bit of time to play some of these questions from the media. They get really obsessive over the Cat 4 stuff with the Navy and these other programs that are existing. They're not asking the questions about what the root causes are.
Yeah. So want me to let him go right now? Or you want to move it along the bar here?
We'll move it to the questions. Just put a couple of the questions up here, and we'll let it play for the group.
Okay.
Very much to all of our panelists today. We'll start with Associated Press, Lita Beldor.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I don't know, Dr. Helen, if you can answer this, or if this is each one of you needs to answer. I'm wondering about bonuses. Can you tell me how much overall the Defense Department has increased the amount of money it's providing to the services for bonuses and other sort of
Stupid question.
services to provide for
Yeah, it's
recruiting?
probably
Over
reporter
this year,
clickbait. We're an article about bonuses.
overall, or if the services need to provide their own. And then Admiral Waters, for the Navy, can you say whether or how closely the Navy is tracking the Cat 4s that you've been
She is
bringing
not
in
comfortable
over
up
the
there.
last
I
year
can
or
just
so,
tell.
to determine whether or not
Yeah.
there's an increased disciplinary or other issues with that sort of larger chunk that you
Seems like a nice lady, though.
bringing in that the other services.
I'm sure
aren't.
she's lovely.
So I'll actually open it up to the services to talk on bonus incentives.
Yeah, ma'am, I don't have the exact amount, but this is one of the areas that in terms of transformation, should we do the same thing that we've been doing every year? So we're looking at a potential pilot to weigh bonus versus station of choice. And what we're seeing is applicants are moving towards the station of choice. With that has garnered savings. I don't have the final amount, but it is a sizable when you look at the total number of applicants. And let's say it could be an estimate from, $3,000 to $5,000 or $6,000 each. So that's one of the areas that when we look at transformation, how can we do something different? And I think it's yielding. I mean, what we're seeing is applicants prefer duty station.
We saved $13.48, ma'am. Next question.
You gotta go to Bill Bauer's response on this, on the bonuses, if you can.
I'm sure. We love talking about this, the Marine Corps, dude. We don't pay bonuses. Let's see here. Let's go. Yeah, Air Force is like, we don't pay bonuses, dude. We're the Air Force. Navy's like, we throw cash.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Get it back. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Marine Corps does not rely on bonuses to attract and inspire young men and women of character to take up the challenge of becoming Marines. That said, we do have some new incentives for some new career fields. This year, we have $15,000 bonuses for electronic maintenance, cyber and crypto operations, and information and communication tech career fields. But again, we don't rely primarily on bonuses. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much for doing this. I have a quick follow-up. I just wanted to make sure I have this correct. So the Army and the Air Force Space Force is increasing their goal for 2025. Navy's staying the same. And then I didn't hear Major General Bowers what the Marine Corps was doing for 2025.
Our goal is increasing by approximately 1,800 Marines.
Okay, 1,800 Marines. Okay, great, thanks. And then separately, Dr. Helen, you mentioned declining eligibility, and I was just wondering if there were any specific efforts to get after that, and specifically in terms of previous drug use. I know there was a provision in the 25 NDAA that would stop the services from requiring someone to test for marijuana before enlisting. What does the DoD think about that provision? If you could provide any more.
Ooh, yeah, there we go. Well, good question.
Yeah, whoever this reporter is,
On estimates, about 23% of youth are eligible to enlist without a waiver. That's for any of our various standards, whether they're medical, dependence, moral. So with regards to medical standards, it's something the department continually looks at and looks at advances in medical science, looking at the data for those who've come in with waivers to see if we can refine the medical standards. We've also instituted a medical accessions right.
I want to say something right here. So the question is about, can I join if I've smoked weed? And she's going to mental prescription stuff. And that's not the question. But the reason why she's doing this is because if you go to MEPS and you say, hey, I do this thing, that's a psychological thing. So they treat it like it's a psychological issue. So she's going in this tangent because that's what MEPS does, is they say, well, this is just a kid experimenting and becoming an adult. No, it's a psychological dependency issue, right? So she's kind of walking this thing in a certain direction because she's thinking like a MEPS person here. So I wanted to make that clarification. It's confusing it's just weed, dude. The question is weed. What are you doing about it? And oh, well, we're trying to look at our, anyways, let me go back to this. Oh man.
Efforts pilot, where for at this point now 51 conditions that used to have, most of them had any history of a particular condition. We're testing the feasibility of reducing the time frame for those conditions. ADHD has actually been one where we've seen a lot of individuals come in under that MARP condition. We've also seen great success as we talked through the Future Sailor, Future Soldier Prep course to invest in those individuals with potential to get them to, whether it be the body composition or some of our academic standards as well. With regards to drugs, certainly.
So Matt, can you pause it real quick? Yeah. So those programs right there, what they're talking about is it's basically a pre-boot camp. It's a pre-boot camp situation. But it's to get them into height and weight standards or body composition standards. And then the other one, when they say academic standards, it's either taking them to move into the high school diploma type realm or to be able to pass the ASVAB. We're basically, in essence, coming up with like the old MASP program that existed for service members where you could increase your ASVAB score. They're doing this on the front end and tying it to front end enlistments. And I can't even imagine that thing is, I can't imagine that's cheap. So it's, seeing as how the school systems out here are kind of broken and, people across the nation aren't reading at 10th grade level, levels, there's got to be some sort of revamp here. And to think that we have not solved this problem with improvements in technology, information at your fingertips, and the fact that people are getting dumber, for lack of a better term, and can't pass the ASVAB, that is a problem. That is a systemic problem that is directly affecting recruiting. Yet they're not talking about anything else other than, oh, we're going to develop programs and throw money at the problem and help you study, and we're going to teach you to not be fat. And we're not even thinking about the amount of resources that could be spent to revamp what we do, either on the back end of attracting talents by treating our service members the right way as they transition out, or coming up with programs that actually make sense on the front end to attract more talent. The fact that we can't see this and we're talking about bonuses and all this madness is just like the most discouraging thing that I've encountered here.
Yeah, yeah. So what they're really going to walking down, in my opinion, is like the community approach to recruiting, which is, attracting people and then creating our opinions are becoming more national as a nation. Our political opinions, the way we look at issues, the way we consume products, it's coming very national. And it's my opinion that recruiters need to have a local community approach to recruiting. I saw that when I used to run Pool PT. I would create like a little community within my group. I would encourage guests to come to these events. I would do things to create a friendly atmosphere that may take years. Like you're talking to sophomores and juniors and getting that communication early and create the influence environment where they have the information early enough to make choices, because by the time you become a senior, you kind of know where you're going, right? Colleges are asking that you apply at the beginning of your senior year. So like if you're waiting until you're putting them in the pool program to touch them, in a good way, right? Touch them in a PT way, right? Or in a way to get them ready for boot camp, you're probably a little late, right? So I think the answers are really going to be just like what the Navy guy said, right? He is the recruiter man is going to solve the problem. And what they should be trying to back those plays, because they see the problem at the community level better than any of these people do. And it doesn't matter how many studies you do or how many cool AI programs you run. It's if you're in, Kingwood, Texas down here, only specific things are going to work. And those recruiters who are in the community down here are going to know what those things are. And she's just talking about, whatever, I don't know.
It is still prohibited for.
I used to get, this is kind of a sidebar tangent here, Tom, but I used to be really impressed by people who would speak, in technical terms and make me feel like I was too stupid to understand what they're talking about. And then I realized later in life that that's just a mechanism of communication to keep people from knowing what you're talking about, or a way to defend a position that you don't want to explore. It's like, oh, we got this program that I can't talk about that's going to solve this problem. And really, you have no idea. It's just this, you're in front of the press. You don't want to get a shotgun blast to the face, and you want to say something impressive just to move on. And I'm not saying that's her, but clearly she's got some press training herself there, I can tell. But anyways.
I think we've got a little bit of time left before, we probably got to hit the pause button.
Yeah.
Do we have the ability to hit the pause button
for this?
Yeah. And pick it back up, or no?
We'll probably have to just end the session and then restart the session at this point. So we'll have to connect. We'd have to edit the audio video and then reconnect it, I guess, later. But I didn't create this I created this as a one-off recording.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's play General Bowers's last little comments on here, like his last thing that he says, and then we'll come back and film the end, I guess, of this. But he has like the final word in all this.
I'm gonna slide this thing until we get to him here. Why are they talking to the Marine Corps, man? Come on now.
He's like at the very end. It's like he has like the last word.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, play it from here.
All right.
So this right here
is the tough.
Go ahead.
This right here to me, Matt, is again, appreciate General Bowers, his fight, his tenacity, but this answer in terms of where the burden has to go in order to keep things moving forward is just not one that's acceptable when there's clearly things in transition that affect the front end recruiter, man. So I'm gonna we'll let this thing play and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I will say before I hit the play button here that Marine Corps recruiters are more pain tolerant than any other recruiters. Like they're more capable of sustaining misery. I think we're trained to be miserable individuals. So I'm assuming, I think I know where this is going, even though I don't think I've seen these comments, but I'll stop talking and we'll play and see if I'm right.
Toughest, most physically demanding of the entry-level training of the services. So physical fitness is therefore very important to us. This is the value of our delayed entry program. We like every applicant to spend at least 30 days in the delayed entry program so we can work with them, they can work with their recruiter, and we can get them in good physical shape to improve their chances of success at recruit training. The delayed entry program has an additional benefit for us. While these kids are getting in good shape working with their recruiters, they bring their friends along. And 25% of our contracts, 1 out of 4, comes from a referral from the delayed entry program. Our Marines love the opportunity to have a delayed entry program to work with their own little squad or platoon of recruits. And this gets to propensity. We like to replace propensity with inspired. So if only 9% of the population is propensed, 91% is just waiting to be inspired. What a golden opportunity. So this is the value of our delayed entry program.
Bro. I'm gonna represent my service here and just say we are hard chargers, brother. But sometimes what we contain in raw desire and energy, we lack in G2. And that's like propensity is nothing to do with inspiration. Propensity is just the capability or the likelihood of an audience to enlist. But I kind of understand what he's saying, but like I said, man, this is a branding moment. I think
strategy. It's a branding strategy, and it's what did Chesty say? Like we're surrounded on all sides, or well, hell, it'd be easier to fight in either direction or whatever. I don't know the exact quote, but
I'm not going to try. But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
That's what this is. Like, hey, we're surrounded. It's going to make it a whole hell of a lot easier to fight wherever we go, and it's just it's the wrong type. It's the right type of thinking in terms of an inspirational, like motivational push. It is the wrong type of strategic message to put out there. That's the sentiment and the amount of effort that we've put into developing this plan. But just like everything else, the battle is going to be won by the individual Marine. And those individual sergeants making it happen. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
my fear really is, Tom, that of the services, we are historically a very conservative institution. We don't like to change as an institution. We're not very good at it. We like our tradition and we like the way things are. And if it works, why the hell would you change it? Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that's a philosophy that we use in the Marine Corps. And my fear is that we're operating already a decade into failed strategy. And the response is going to be, let's turn the effort volume knob up to 10 and really slay the individual tactical level recruiter before we ever think about making adjustments to the way we do business. And I love the way, the Marine in me is conflicted, because I love to hear this kind of stuff. It gets me going. But the intellectual or the tactician in me is like, this needs to get changed, or all we're doing is penalizing, the youngest of us, and that's not the right thing either. So,
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I think this wraps it up for episode number 2, and appreciate everybody being here for this journey. Hope that you guys do take the time to watch the entire press briefing, because there's so much more in there to unpack. But appreciate you guys being with us today. And Matt, as always, I appreciate being with you.
Yeah, brother, this is a good one. I think people are going to really enjoy this. I think we had some entertaining moments in there, and at least anything, I hope it gets people engaged in the recruiting conversation, because this will affect us long term. And if you're here listening to the closing remarks, I really appreciate you all watching. And if you get the opportunity, follow us on LinkedIn, like, share, subscribe on YouTube, and we will see you at the next podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.